Hey everybody, it's Andy Timmons, and thanks for checking out this guitarist video. I want to thank Jason Sidwell for inviting me to be a part of this series, and happy to do the playing and talk about the gear and the techniques and the ideas that I'm using over these tracks. This first track, Jubilant, I really enjoy. It's got some nice chord changes to it, so thank you, Jason, for putting that together for me. But first, let me talk about the gear that I used for the track. And if you know me, I'm sure you recognize this old guitar. It's my original AT100 signature model prototype from 1994. And it's been modified a little bit over the years. I now have a coil tap on the humbucker, which actually works really, really well. I wish I would have done it sooner. And the tuners may be changed out at some point. They're now the Godot locking tuners. AT1 pickup DiMarzio in there, 2 DiMarzio cruisers. It's been refretted 8 or 9 times, I forget. We've lost track. I'm afraid it's going to disintegrate one year, but it's still ticking. And very happy to still be playing it. Amp-wise, I've got my trusty Mesa Boogie Lone Star that I've been using for many, many years. Still my go-to amp. As you can tell, I have a lot of amps, but this is still my favorite. So I was just on this recording, I was just on the clean channel and running just pedals in front of it. And for the basic tones, I have a JHS signature AT pedal, and that's the main lead sound that I've got set up for a pretty crunchy tone. Just the amp without the pedal. So just a nice kind of basic clean tone. I'm hitting the front end pretty hard. And for me to talk to you, we've turned down the volume considerably, so it might sound a little less woolly and beefy than it does on the recording, but that's so we can communicate. But that was the main humbucker tone, and then in the second section of the tune, this lovely little bridge, I switched to a very early BB preamp that we're actually going to be re-releasing later this year, so I'm real excited about that. They're going back and actually scoping out the actual paint that they use. We're copying everything exactly like this particular Magic pedal, but when I went to the neck pickup, that's the old exotic BB pedal. It really makes a nice kind of mid-gain boost. But also got the volume up considerably on that one. And as usual, I've got some echo in the effects loop, and today it's a Strymon Timeline that I've got set up as a dual echo. So dotted eighth quarter kind of, if depending on the BPM, it'd be about 375 to 500 milliseconds. Dotted eighth quarter. And I've got an expression pedal hooked up, so I can season to taste. I can get less or more echo as we go. In the mix down, I decided I didn't have quite enough ambience, and we added a little bit of a plug-in called Echo Boy that I learned about from Mike Dane, who was obviously working with me on the last Andy Timmons Band record. And you know, he's very much a vintage gear nut, and so if there's ever any plugins that he actually finds that he likes, I figure he's done some research and it sounds great, and it does. I love it. So anyway, there's the tone. Now let's talk about the playing. So in discussing the approach to what I eventually ended up playing on this track, like anything else, the first thing I want to do is just kind of jam over it. He sent the track, and there was a basic chord chart that I could review and kind of see what was happening as well as hear it. And at first, a 2-minute, 20-second piece to just jam over is kind of daunting to me. That's a pretty lengthy solo. So my overall inclination after playing through it a couple times was to hear, some nice melodies and actually kind of make a tune out of it. And that's what I did. So in addition to that, I'll also want to figure out what relationships each chord might have with each other. When I'm soloing and when I'm writing melodies or improvising, I do consider each chord as its own entity, but I also may consider, what family they're from. Are they all kind of in the same key, or can it be interpreted a certain way? And that relationship might also affect my note choice. But let's first start with the melody that I ended up basically writing for the tune. And I've got my friend Nick who's going to help me with a bit of chordal backing so you can kind of hear some of the direction. So if you'll play me the first change there. So just those two first chords from that B to that F sharp. That sounded like a nice melody, but as I ended up doing through this whole first verse, I kind of decided to use a bit of my solo guitar approach when I play with the trio. When there's no backing, even though this track has some really lovely keyboards and rhythm guitars, I like the idea of supporting melodies with other notes from the chords. Then when it goes to the next change, which is E major 7, I use the G sharp, and the melody is now the F sharp, which is the 9th. Then it goes to D major 7. So there, even if the backing wasn't happening, I think you get a good idea of the harmony. Then I take it up an octave. For a little variety. There, when it gets the next E major 7. And D major 7, if you play that. Then it resolves into that next change for the verse, where it's E over G sharp. So if you play the E over G sharp, to me, when I hear that, I might consider it more of a G sharp minor, and part of that is, and this is a recurring theme throughout the whole piece, in that over every one of these major 7 chords, of course, depending on if it sounds Ionian or Lydian to you, they kind of, at least that the first E major 7 sounds very Ionian. So of course you could use the E major scale, but I tend to like the sound of a major pentatonic from a 5th scale degree of the chord. So if you'll play the E major 7 once for me, Nick, just E major 7. What that means is the major pentatonic from the 5th, which is the 5th scale degree. You've got the root, 3rd, G sharp, 5th. So it's a B major pentatonic. You play it. Really love that sound. And so by doing that, you've got the 5th, the 6th, the major 7. You avoid the root, 9, major 3rd, and 5th again. So it's a really nice sound. You go to the D major 7, turns into A major pentatonic. And especially in this chord sequence, once we've been on E major 7 and we go to that D major 7, for whatever reason, the D always just sounds kind of out of place to me. I might pass over it briefly, but you're mainly going to hear those notes out of that major pentatonic from the 5th. So D major one more time. So obviously it's handy to have these particular pentatonics wired all over the neck. So I encourage you to not only work on, positionally being able to walk through all the different modes of each of those, but also work it out on single string and double string ideas. And I do a lot of that, especially in this piece. As we listen to the playback, I keep doing that same thing, which is like over the E major, I might play those notes of the B major. I'll have a very horizontal approach to that. And that's consistent through the whole piece. When it gets to that next verse, it's an E over G sharp, which is basically just a first inversion E major. Because of the voicing that's in the keyboards and the nature of that B major pentatonic working over that E major, obviously the relative minor of B major, G sharp. So that first phrase I play is when it gets to that section on the neck pickup. It's just a big old G sharp minor blues lick. And the next change, which is, what is it, A major? So. I just kind of stayed in that same mode. And what is the next change? It goes to G6. That's a beautiful little modulation because you're kind of in this E major, G sharp minor. That's a device I use a lot. I like to have something that shares a chord tone but modulates. So if you've got, in my head, the G sharp minor sound, the third of that G sharp minor turns into the third of that G. Oh, it's a beautiful sound. And then the next chord is a C, major 7. So all three of those chords share that B note. And so there's no doubt that whatever melody I came up with, that's probably being alluded to. So if you play the E over G sharp. So all three of those changes, I would have held on to that B in some way, or the third of that C major chord. That's another common thing that my ear is drawn to, is I want to hear the third of each chord, no matter what kind of tune I'm playing. That's going to be featured at some point during that chord sequence. Over that C major, I know I went C major. And then resolving really nicely, and then we're back into the chord sequence that started the song. And that again, because that C major, I was hearing is Lydian, so that's a major scale with a raised 4. And that common tone is how I wanted to end up back in the next modulated section as we're back to that B chord, because that's a chord tone of that B. Then I repeat the melody. Then I'm off to the races with all these same, kind of major 70 devices. The one slightly different section that I really love once it got to is the bridge section when it goes down to the F major 7. And the very first time I played through it, and it breaks down to this really cool drum groove, and it just, it needs to breathe here. And so that's when I ended up going into the unison bends, where I forget how I get it. If you play what's the last chord before that? The little C sharp minor, yeah. That's a really nice modulation, and I chose the note A, which is the third of that F major 7 chord. 2, 3, 4. The next chord is G, so what did I do? I went up to the third of the G chord, the B. Then a little, I like to think of this as a Todd Rundgren move, where it gets back down to that F chord. So it's just I'm just playing the sixth interval. So it's a E, C. Forget where it goes. Eventually, it moves back up to that B. Let's go through the whole chord sequence one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Third. Yeah. So just a little melodic tying together of chord tones into the modulation. And if I'm thinking of any licky bits, let's see, the licky bits. I had a couple of arpeggio things that I threw in. I guess most notably towards the end there was this. It's basically the same type of arpeggio I did on an old tune called Groove or Die, which is one of these kind of neoclassical, shreddy sounding things. But it worked nicely on this tune just for a little energy. I guess I was aware that, okay, I'm playing melodically, maybe I need something a little, energetic and flashy in some way. So I guess I feel obligated to put something in. But it's just a. I never really got a hang of the sweeping thing, but I'm working on it. Probably a little sloppy on the track, but it gives the desired energy that I wanted to get at that part of the track. And I think that kind of covers it. That's the basic ideas really about any track that I play. I'm gonna analyze the chord progression, figure out melodically how I can tie it together to where it makes sense and makes a musical statement of some sort. Adding a little bit from the paint palette of if it needs a little flash here and there, use that. Not too much to where it becomes all the same color, so to speak. And so I hope you enjoy working on the track yourself. I'm hoping they provide the backing track for you to jam on as well. And I look forward to doing more of these for you. So thanks for listening.